Warm greetings to all the learners. In this session, we will talk about channels in process of marketing, which is also called as distribution. Now, when a company is trying to sell their products to the consumers, how does the product reach the consumer? So, the distribution or the marketing channel is an essential link between the company and between the consumer, because it is not possible for the company to reach all the consumers. So therefore companies will make use of these marketing intermediaries. They are people in between. That's why you call them as middlemen, intermediaries, or distributors, dealers, sellers, resellers. Different terminologies are being used depending upon the functions that they perform, because they carry this particular activity of sending the product from the place of distribution to the place of consumption. Now, producers, that is the company, and consumers are away from one another in terms of physical distances. Even if they are located close in terms of physical distances, still the products have to be made available at a convenient location. So this process of making the product available to the consumer is being done by somebody who is called as a marketing channel, or a middleman, or a marketing intermediary, who supports the entire process of distribution. So in today's session, we will talk about who are these marketing intermediaries or marketing channels or middlemen who are executing this particular function of distribution. Let us see who are middlemen. Middlemen are individuals or business firms which will render the service of directly relating the product sale from the company side to the consumer side. So the flow of product from the side of the company to the side of the consumer, connecting the company and the ultimate consumer by making the product available to the ultimate consumer, is what is the role of a middleman. So middlemen are basically companies which are helping the company which is producing the product to make the product available for consumption to the ultimate consumer, because production and consumer are varied. They are all separated because producers and consumers are not necessarily located at the same physical location. Therefore, whoever are the producers of the products need to be taken from them and being made available to the consumer. This function of facilitating the flow of product from the producers to the consumer is nothing but your distribution or marketing channel or intermediaries and middlemen who are involved. Companies basically can have a choice of eliminating the middlemen, but the functions that are performed by the middlemen cannot be eliminated. Even if the company does not take help of any middleman and will say that we will sell directly, in that case also the company itself is performing the function of distribution. So the function of distribution cannot be eliminated as such, even if you eliminate middlemen. It is the choice of the company. There are companies such as Amway who will do sales directly to the consumer through their representatives. You don't find Amway products which are available in any distribution outlets, because Amway has got its own stores through whom they will sell. So they have eliminated middlemen, but they have not eliminated the function of distribution. So distribution as such is an essential function of marketing. Now these channels who are involved, let us understand what are these marketing channels. These are nothing but interdependent organizations which are involved in the process of making the product available for consumption or available for use. There should be somebody who is taking the product from the producer and making the product available to the consumer. So these people are nothing but your marketing channel, who are organizations which are interdependent. Companies are dependent on channels, channels are dependent on companies, and as a consumer, I am dependent on the channel. For example, morning you get up and see that your toothpaste is out of stock. Now you will go immediately to the grocery store and buy a toothpaste pack. So what is happening here? The product may be actually produced by Procter & Gamble or Hindustan Unilever or Dabur or any other company, but they are selling that product through all these channels, and the grocery store is making the product available to us. So they are the retailers, and these retailers are a channel member who are making the product available to the ultimate consumer like you and me. So marketing channel basically is defined as an exchange relationship which is created in terms of creating value to the consumer so that the consumer can acquire the product, consume the product, and sometimes also dispose the products which are being made available for the consumer by the company. So marketing channel is basically an interdependent organization which is helping in the process of consumption or use of that particular product. Now these distribution channels, they are also involved in the process of transferring title of the product. If it is a good, then you buy the good and you own the good. There are certain goods for which the title also has to be transferred. For example, you buy a car. The car may be made by Hyundai or may be made by Maruti or Mahindra. This is the company which is making the car. Now there are dealers and distributors through whom the car is made available. For example, you have Mitra agencies or you've got Varun Motors. These are all distributors through whom we buy the cars. Now when the car comes to them and we buy from them, they have to transfer the title to us. So the ownership of the car is transferred in our name. So the distribution channel essentially performs this particular function of transferring the title of the goods to the ultimate consumer when the product moves from the producer side to them and from them to our side as the consumer. So there are producers, there are middlemen, and then there are final consumers. Again, you need to understand that sometimes buyers of the product are not users of the product. Buyers may be different, consumers may be different. Again, there comes the process of whom are you selling. So as a distributor, am I selling to the ultimate consumer or am I selling only to a buyer who is buying on behalf of the consumer? For example, a patient who is sick and admitted in the hospital, he will not come to buy medicine, but some of his relatives may come to buy the medicine. So therefore, they are the buyers, whereas the ultimate user is the patient there. So as a distributor, I also have to understand to whom am I selling. Am I selling to the ultimate buyer or am I selling only to any user who is being involved in between? Now these marketing channels, they perform a variety of utility functions. They provide form utility because the product has to be sold in the exact form in which it was made by the producer. So they have to safeguard the form of the product. This has to be kept in mind essentially in case of perishable products which may have change in their form. For example, daily morning we buy milk packets and bread. We first look for the expiry date because they are the perishable product. So the distributor will have to be very careful that the form of the product is not lost, but the stock gets over by the time, before the time the product actually gets expired. So distributor performs or gives the utility of form. Product has to reach the consumer in the same form as it was actually being produced by the producer. Sometimes the distributors also will make changes in the form so that they provide better utility of the product. For example, when you buy a car, there could be some additional accessories which may be provided from the distributor's end to enhance the working of the car. So you could have more of provision of accessories from the distributor side which was not actually made by the company as such. So that provision is also available to enhance the performance of that particular product. So these channels provide form utility. They provide time utility. Unless and until the product reaches to us in time when we have to actually consume it, otherwise the entire process of distribution becomes useless. So therefore they have to see to it that the products reach the consumer in time. We see there are so many products which may go out of stock and they may be replenished immediately depending upon the demand in the market, because the demand is for that period of time. So distributor has to take care of provision of time utility. Then place utility, where you have to talk about making the product available at different locations wherever the consumer may be located so that consumer can conveniently buy that product. And possession utility, where you talk about title, ownership of the product being transferred to the consumer. So distribution channel members will perform all these functions to provide utility to the consumer. And these people basically reduce the physical distance between the point of production and the point of consumption as such. Now, there are many terms which are used, some of them interchangeably, some of them specifically for a particular type of function which these intermediaries or middlemen perform. First basic term which we use is called as your middleman. Middleman is any intermediary who is between manufacturer and end user, whoever is the end user and between the company. If there is anybody involved in between, that person will be called as a middleman. Then you have a term called agent. Now, agent are the people who are actually having legal authority to sell the product or a service on behalf of the company. For example, you talk about banks and insurance companies. They have got people who are registered with them as agents, and they have the function of principal and agent relationship with the company, and they execute the function on behalf of the company, and they are answerable back to the company. So, there you call agents who are being involved. They are also middlemen, intermediaries who are there. Then you have wholesalers, people who buy products in bulk from the producer and stock them and make them available to the retailers so that they sell to the ultimate consumer. So, you call them as an intermediary in terms of wholesaler who is buying products in bulk from the manufacturer. Linked to the wholesaler is your retailer who will buy in small quantities from the wholesaler so that he can sell through his retail outlet, retail store to the consumer. They are called as retailers. Then very imprecise definition of the term distributor and dealer, who can do many functions in terms of selling, stocking inventory, in terms of giving credit, in terms of doing transfer of titles and ownership, in terms of it can be retailer, wholesaler, reseller, broker who can be involved. So, very imprecise definition because they perform many functions as such altogether. All these people, whether you call them as middlemen or wholesaler or retailer or reseller or agent or broker or distributor, all of them mean nothing but marketing intermediaries, channel members who are helping the company to sell the product to the consumer as such. These are all members involved in the entire chain of process of distribution. Now, as a company, when I make a choice of how many members do I want or which channel do I take into consideration, because you can go for a wholesaler or a retailer, I can go for an agent or a distributor, how do I make a choice of them? It all depends upon certain factors. For example, it depends upon the market. What is the type of the market? How many number of consumers are there in the market? Where is the market actually located in terms of geography? How much may be the order size of that particular market? Based on that, I will have to decide whether I will have a distributor or a dealer or a wholesaler or a retailer whom I will engage. Similarly, it depends upon the product itself. For example, what is the value of the product? For example, if I am selling diamonds, I may not be having too many middlemen involved in between because it is high value products which are there. On the other hand, if I am selling something like tomatoes or pulses or grains, I may be having n number of middlemen in between because the unit value there is lesser. So, depending upon the value and the worth of the product, I can talk about how many number of middlemen I can engage. Similarly, depending upon the perishability, if the products have got high intensity to perish, then you will have to engage less number of middlemen, because the more number of middlemen it passes hands, the product will perish by the time it reaches the consumer. So, therefore, you have to have lesser number of middlemen in case the products perish. Similarly, if the products are of technical nature, like computer systems, laptops or high-tech devices, based on that also I have to make a choice of intermediaries who will have a complete technical knowledge about that particular product. So, then depending upon the market, depending upon the product, I can have a choice. Depending upon what is the service that the intermediary is providing me, based on that also I can have a choice of how many middlemen I can have. So, what services will they provide? Will they provide me only physical transfer of goods? Will they provide me service in terms of inventory handling? Will they provide me services in terms of providing warehouse, go down, credit facilities? I have to take into consideration what all services will they provide to me. Based on that, I can have my middlemen which can be engaged. So the market, the product, the functions which are performed by the middlemen, and the company itself. The company has got their own internal issues to deal with. So based upon the internal dynamics of the company also, you can have a choice of the middlemen depending upon ability of the company, desire to have that particular channel, services which are provided by the seller to that particular company, what kind of financial resources do you have to engage those middlemen. All those things will be the issues of the company. Now, when a company makes a choice of having these middlemen, the company also have to understand what functions will these middlemen provide. Are they providing functions which are related only to transaction? Are they providing functions which are also related to logistics? Are they going to provide me functions which are called facilitating function? So middlemen basically perform these three broad category of function. Within each category you have again sub functions which are there. The three broad categories of functions which are there are transactional, logistics and facilitating. When you say transactional, it will involve buying, selling, risk taking. The middlemen purchase the products for resale and they stock with them, and then they sell to the retailer or the ultimate consumer. That is buying from the company. Then selling to the other distributors or selling to the consumer. So buying, selling. Then risk taking, because they are assuming the products, they have the role, they bear the products with them, so they have the risk which is related to the products. It could be in terms of physical nature of the product, it could be in terms of title of the product, it could be in terms of the transit. During the transportation also there could be a lot of risks which can be involved. So they bear the function of risk taking also. This is the first set of function which they perform, which is called transactional function, in which buying, selling, risk taking, these three are the sub functions which are there. Similarly, they have functions which are called logistics function. In logistic you have functions such as assorting, because a seller may have multiple products which are there. As a distributor, as a middleman, am I selling all of them or am I having a choice of only few assorted products? So assortment will be nothing but choice of the products which as a dealer I have to sell the product to the consumer. So I will create product assortment, and from the choice of the products that I will sell to the seller, ultimate consumer, by taking the product from the producer. Then after assorting I will do storing. In logistics, I have to store the products at some place till the time it actually reaches the consumer. For example, if I am a company like a Big Bazaar or a Spencer, which are called as retail stores, then when I buy from the manufacturer, all these products are stored in my storehouse or a godown. Then from there I keep the products in the shelf of my company. So this function is called as storing function. So once I acquire the product from the manufacturer, I have to store the product with me before it reaches the consumer as such. So storing is also a part of it. Then sorting, depending upon the grades of the product, some of the products may have certain gradings to it. So based on that I have to sort the products depending upon grading, high quality, low quality, export or domestic sale. Based on that I would grade the products. Then I will also do transportation, that is physical movement till the time the product reaches the consumer. These are the sub functions which are there in the broad function of logistic. The first broad function was transaction, where you said buying, selling, risk taking. Second broad function is logistics, where you talk about assortment, storing, sorting and transportation. The third broad function is facilitating, where you talk about financing. Financing, giving credit to the customers. So when the customer is buying the product, sometimes the distributors give you a financing option. For example, you want to buy a two-wheeler, so in case you don't have the full money with you, you can make a down payment and then the distributor will finance the purchase for you. Similarly, if you go to your nearest grocery store, whoever are the local consumers, they may be given some kind of a credit from the grocer itself. So that is your financing function. Same way, function of passing on the information, how to use the product, what are the risks associated with it, what are the instructions to be followed while using. For example, if I buy a automatic washing machine, then the distributor will have to demonstrate to me as to how the automatic washing machine is going to work. So instructions of use also has to be given. This is also an essential function which is being performed by the distributor. So you have transactional function, logistics function, and functions which will facilitate the entire process of selling. Now when you talk about these functions which are being performed, there is something which flows. There are some activities which flow from the side of the distributor till the time the product reaches the consumer. You call them as marketing flows. So marketing flows in the entire marketing channel. You have 5 types of flows which are there in the marketing channel. The first flow is called as the physical flow. Product is with the producer. The producer transports the product. So physically the product comes to the transporter. From the transporter, the product again now goes to the dealer, retailer channel. From the channel, the product gets transported to the consumer. So you have the physical movement of the product. This is called as the physical flow. That is the first flow. The second flow is called as your title flow, ownership, change of ownership. Now from the producer will not give ownership to the transporter because transporter is only transporting. So the ownership now goes to the dealer, and dealer in turn transfers the ownership to the consumer, or the intermediary transfers the ownership to the consumer. So you have manufacturer, you have distributor, dealer or intermediary, and then you have consumer. So the flow goes in terms of title. That is the second flow. Third flow is payment flow. Now first 2 flows are forward flows: company, transporter, dealer, transporter, consumer, forward. Company, distributor, consumer, again forward. Payment is a backward flow. Consumer will pay to the dealer, dealer again will pay back to the company. So that way the movement flows backward there. That is called as your payment flow. Then comes information flow. Company provides information to the dealer, distributor, intermediary about the product, how to use the product, care or instructions for use, which the dealer will pass on to the consumer. So the flow is again forward. Company gives information about, for example, if I buy a laptop and then I want to know the features of a laptop, it may be produced by Dell or HP or Infosys or any other company. Now when these companies are creating the hardware of the laptop or the software of the laptop, then that has to be explained to the dealer so that the dealer will explain it back to me when I have the doubts. So this is the information flow which will happen, which is again a forward flow. Then you have promotion flow. Company will advertise and promote their product through the dealers to the consumer. So that way you have promotions also which will happen. These are the 5 types of flows which will be there. Flow in terms of physical movement, title, payment, flow in terms of information, and flow in terms of promotions which will happen. So you have functions which are performed by the intermediary and the marketing flows in the entire marketing channel. Now you have 2 types of markets which are there in the market space. You have markets which are called B2C, which is business to consumer, which is called as a consumer market. Then you have markets which are called B2B, which is business to business, which are called industrial markets. So consumer markets, industrial markets. Products like toothpaste, soaps, shampoos, cooking oils, utensils, refrigerators, television sets, etc., which we as a consumer buy, belongs to consumer market. Products such as rubber, which may be used by a car manufacturer for making wheels of a car, that is nothing but your industrial market. Microchips, which are purchased by a laptop manufacturer from a chip making company, is a B2B transaction. So you have consumer markets and you have industrial market. In these 2 types of markets, you have different types of intermediaries who can be involved. Company may make a choice of no intermediary, which is called 0 level. Company, consumer, no intermediary. Company, consumer, 1 intermediary, retailer. So that is called 1 level. Company, wholesaler, retailer, consumer. So how many people here? 2 people, wholesaler and retailer. That is called 2 level. Company, wholesaler, retailer, jobber. 3 levels. Jobber are people who are facilitating the function of retailing to the consumer. For example, we have Swiggy, Zomato, we order online, the order goes to the restaurant, but the restaurant sends us the product through the jobber. So the jobber are the people who are connecting the retailer and the company. This is called 3 level. So nobody in between, 0 level. One person in between, 1 level, a wholesaler. 2 people in between, wholesaler and retailer. 3 people in between, wholesaler, retailer, jobber, between the company and between the consumer, right? So you have these are as your consumer markets. Similarly, in industrial market also, you can have different levels which can be there. 0 level, nobody in between the company and between the consumer. That means here industrial market means 2 companies. Company selling, company buying. So you have 2 companies here. When you don't have anybody in between, 0 level. Company selling and company buying, if you have somebody involved in between, they are called as industrial distributors. For example, machine tools. When you have a HMT company which requires machine tools and they buy from small machine tool parts, spare parts, machine tools from small vendors, distributor will be involved in between, which are called as industrial distributors. So 1 level. Similarly, you can have manufacturer's representative. They are connecting with the industrial distributor, who in turn will connect with the industrial buyer. So industrial seller, seller's representative, industrial distributor, then industrial buyer, because we are talking about B2B. It is not an individual consumer. So there also you can have 2 levels and 3 levels which can be involved in there. If you don't have anybody, 0 level. 1 person called industrial distributor, 1 level. Company representative, industrial distributor, 2 levels. Company sales office, company representative and industrial distributor, 3 levels which will be there. So same way, consumer market and industrial market, you have the levels there. Now whenever channels are there, there are different channel decisions which the company will have to make. Deciding whether the company will have to go for something called as intensive distribution, extensive distribution or selective distribution. Intensive means having your product to be sold in as many outlets as possible. So say for example, I want to buy Nescafe, available in as many stores as possible, because the or Lux soap, available in as many, Lifebuoy, available in as many stores as possible. Intensive distribution. Exclusive means the product is available in limited number of stores who have exclusive rights of selling that particular product. Companies will say exclusively available in such and such store. So that means the product is not available everywhere, it is available only in limited number of stores. You can also have something called as selective distribution, which is in between these two, intensive and extensive. In between you have selective. That means I am not selling everywhere, but I am selling in selected number of outlets, which is called as selective distribution, depending upon a number of stores in a particular area. For example, in Himayat Nagar, if you see here in Hyderabad, you may have many number of sports companies which are selling athleisure products. So they will do selective distribution there. So that way you can have number of intermediaries, intensive, extensive or selective. This is decision of how to sell. Then you also have to have decision related to how to manage. How do you select the members? How do you motivate them? How do you evaluate their performance? Because when you are selecting, you have to match your goal and their goal, because distributors also have to have their own margins. So your product price should not go up just because of the distributor's margin. So you have to take care that what is their goal and what is your goal, and there should be goal compatibility. Otherwise, you will have conflict in your entire process of distribution. So therefore, when you select channel members, you have to select them carefully. You also have to motivate them so that they push the sales. How is it possible that one retail store is able to sell faster and the other store is not able to? Because these members are motivated to sell more, they get incentives. These incentives are nothing but your sales promotion incentives, which are given to the stores so that they sell more and more products which are there. But in this entire process, there could be some chances of conflicts which can come between the company and between the channel. If goals are not compatible, if control process is too tight, if roles and responsibilities are not very clear, if intermediaries are too many and they don't have a clarity of their zones, their jurisdictions and all, then there are all conflicts which are bound to arise Nevertheless, these conflicts can also be resolved by the company by the process of accommodation, co-optation, diplomacy and all. But what is to be remembered here is channel decisions which the company will have to make. Select members, manage members and evaluate the performances of these members. So, this particular session we have spoken about distribution as an essential element in the process of marketing. Marketing cannot be complete unless you have an apt choice of the distribution channel, because these distribution channels help you to take products from the place of production to the place of consumption. So, distribution plays an essential role there. Thank you.